Hey, good day to you. This is Stan Perchowski with Perchowski Estate Law, and this is the Ask Stan show every Thursday at 12 noon, where I answer all your estate planning questions submitted throughout the week. If you have a question about wills, trusts, Medicaid pre-planning, Medicaid crisis planning, the nursing home, or just estate planning in general, just send them to me here on Facebook or call me at 363-7222 or email me at perchowskiestatelaw@gmail.com. I'll answer them live on WKSR Radio, and we post them here on the Ask Stan show every Thursday. So, let's get right to it.
The Stan Perchowski Estate Law Oldie of the Week. Van Morrison, Brown Eyed Girl. He picks them out when he first comes in. That's the first thing he does is, hey, I want you to find this song, yada, 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 and that's what we do.
No, I hadn't picked one that you couldn't find in your database yet. So that's good.
We've been pretty lucky so far. Now, the next time Tammy, your wife, comes in to sit in for you, I'm going to let her pick her own song.
Yep.
You tricked her last time. You had already told me a week ahead of time what you wanted.
That's right.
And I had it ready, and she wanted her to pick her own. So
her idea of an oldie is a little bit newer than my idea of an oldie. But it was a good one she had in mind.
Good to have you this morning.
Oh, good to be here. Hey, we had I had my presentation on Tuesday night that I called the Christian Perspectives for Estate Planning, just a little Bible study that I did. Had a pretty good turnout. The majority of it was online, but nonetheless, it was a good conversation starter and sparked some thought process for folks. It was good turnout. Nice to have a change of pace and just discuss things. But I may do that again. I'll keep everybody posted for that. But hey, what I want to talk about today is I get a question a lot. This is a question I get a lot from folks, and it's also tied to a real case and a real question brought to me. And a lot of folks will start things out when they talk to me and say something to the effect that, well, I'm not rich, or I don't have a lot of money, but so I'm wondering if this is something I should do, or is this compatible with what I want to do? And I get that a lot, and I've told folks before. I've said, it's not the size of your estate that determines the planning of your estate. But had an individual that came in and was considering setting up trust funds for her grandchildren. She was hoping to give them a head start on adulthood whenever the time came, and she wanted to provide some sort of guaranteed financial security for them as they got older and help cover some of the important events in life, such as paying for college or maybe a wedding or buying a first home. Some of the stuff I've talked about on many shows before. So it was certainly a normal request. And she also said she really wanted to consider setting them up to help them pay for their college education and put some kind of stipulation in there that they can access some of the money and get some of the funds only after they graduate. Sort of incentivize going to college. She also wanted to set up so the grandchild could receive maybe regular increments of money throughout time, but she wanted some sort of special trigger in there for special events, like I said, like for wedding or purchasing a new home. So, and it turned out one of her 6 grandchildren with special needs, so she wanted to make sure she had some kind of funds in trust to be specifically targeted to help that person with special needs. And she said, here's what she said. She said, I'm far from wealthy, but with 6 grandchildren, I won't be leaving them a lot, but I do want to leave them some. So, the question I kind of get sometimes, I thought only rich people set up trust funds, that sort of thing. And that seems to be the perception, because I hear that so much. That it just happens to be what people think, that when you think of a trust fund for children, this image of wealthy, overprivileged teenagers driving fancy cars and attending expensive private schools or spending their summers traveling overseas, and that seems to come to mind. And that's just a stereotype in my opinion. It really has no basis in fact. I mean, trust funds are a powerful estate planning tool that we use for families from all sorts of means and all sorts of backgrounds. So the size of your estate does not determine whether or not a trust fund is good for you. I mean, trust funds are not, and I say this again, they're not just for like the very wealthy. Regular people, middle-class citizens, can set up trust funds too. So, what is a trust fund? Well, really, it's kind of simple. Trust fund is simply a legal entity that holds property for the benefit of another. Now, we use them in planning for a really wide variety of purposes. When we do trust plans for clients, it's just whatever they want to use, but I'm going to go over some of the most common examples of how we use trust funds. One of the biggest things is that we use it to distribute assets to heirs, and we can eliminate the hassle and the expense and the nightmare of probate. You can provide charitable gifts. Most folks, we talked about that a little bit on my Christian perspective of estate planning and some of the tithing requirements. If you want to leave a charitable gift to somebody or organization, that's a great way to do that. We can ensure financial well-being of some of our family members with things like special needs, like I talked about. Another good tool for trusts is to protect your assets, protect your heirs' assets from their lawsuits or their creditors. Also, one of the big things we do is we protect your assets from catastrophic costs and expenses of like nursing home care, long-term care, the Medicaid issue. And, to some extent, we deal with it to eliminate estate taxes and reduce that sort of thing. So, leaving an inheritance in trust, it really is also almost an essential if you're a family that you want to ensure that your grandchildren, or if you have children that are under age 18, are beneficiaries of the estate. Because we kind of want to be able to set specific rules on how they get it or how that's going to be distributed or used. An example I often use, and we do, some people choose this, and you can set up your trust to distribute it to your adult children over time. Like, good example would be like a third of it at age 25, a third of your inheritance at age 30, and a third at 35. What that does for them, Butch, is that gives them more than one chance to blow their inheritance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Spread it out a little bit, make it, if you've got somebody, is a little bit of a spendthrift or goes through money like water, everybody's got one of those. So, how does a trust fund work? Really a trust can hold anything of value. It can hold money, it can hold real estate, it can hold stocks, bonds, it can even hold things like art and antiques. How it works is really kind of simple. The person that creates the trust, establishes the rules for the trust. And you've heard me talk on the show before about what I call the rule book. Well, you come up with the rules of trust, and the rules just simply determine how the assets are going to be managed, what requirements have to be met in order to trigger the distributions to the beneficiaries. And we've already gone over some of them, college, new home, wedding. If those are the trigger events, then that allows the person that's over the trust, which is the trustee, to distribute to the beneficiary. If it's for a purpose that you don't want your heirs spending money on, like drug or alcohol addiction, or an unwilling spouse, or something like that, well, we can put those in the rule book and make those the rules and the triggers to prevent distribution for those purposes. And really, a trust fund and doing a trust for your heirs is what I call a tremendous advantage when you set up a trust for your child or your grandchild. When you set assets aside for them, you can typically decide what age they'll get it. The default age that we use a lot is like 25. The reason we use 25 is, if you pay attention to science, and I know it's hard to believe science these days, but science tells us that our brain doesn't really fully develop till about 25 to 29. And I would have never believed that 30 years ago, but now that I have children in that time, in that age bracket, I believe it. I think it's true. And I think they're sort of underestimating, to be honest with you. But, so if you want to wait and distribute funds to them when they're, a little older, 25, that may be a good thing because, who wants you really want an 18-year-old son getting a big inheritance? I don't. I just don't think the thought process is the same. So, here's some other advantages. We can put conditions on how it's distributed. You might want to impose rules, like I said, on how old the beneficiary has to be before they can control their money. You might want to put conditions on how they actually use it. Really, when you want to decide what those things are, it just kind of depends on your family dynamics, what issues you got going with your heirs that you want to sometimes protect them from themselves on, that sort of thing. So, and again, we can prevent them from spending it all at once. We can instruct the trustee to just pay it out at intervals, some every year over a specific time frame. And like I just mentioned, spendthrift. We can put a clause in there. We call it a spendthrift clause. It gives your trustee a big discretion, a lot of discretionary powers to provide the beneficiaries with funds, so that they can maintain their lifestyle. But we don't allow the beneficiary direct access to any and all the money so that they can use it for the reasons we're trying to protect it. Another thing that comes up from time to time is you can skip a generation. You can specifically leave your money and jump to a generation directly to your future grandchildren. That sort of thing. There's a tax that's imposed when you do that, but when you write a trust, we can carve out an exception up to $1 million, which I don't really run into that too much here in Pulaski, but if we do, you can give up to $1 million to generations where you actually skip the generations before that. And it's just an efficient way to distribute, because whenever, if you have these terms and conditions, whenever you distribute to your heirs, you avoid all the costs, the delay of court, filings, and just the general nightmare of probate. So anyway, that wraps it up. Those are, don't think you don't have enough money or your estate's too small to do a trust plan, because that should not be the deciding factor. So if that interests you and sparks any thought, and you want to give me a call, I have sold gift cards for estate plans for people that want their family members to get them. So give me a call at Perchowski Estate Law at 931-363-7222. Talk to myself or Miss Alex or Miss Tammy, and we'll get you set up an appointment and we'll talk about it.
All right, sounds good, Stan. Good to have you in again this Thursday morning, and we will be looking for you again next week.
And I'll start working on the oldie.
That's right. Got a week to think about it. Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Stan Perchowski